Welcome back. How much of an impact will funding charter schools have on public education here in Florida? According to the State House, collectively, school districts will have an estimated $1.4 billion in their budgets this coming school year. The new education law sets aside nearly 7% for charters. That's about $96 million. Sarasota County schools districts list 11 charter schools in the county. However, not all the charter schools are eligible for the funds. They must meet financial and academic performance standards and have been operating for the last 2 years. Joining us for more on charter school funding is Bridget Ziegler, Vice Chair of the Sarasota County School Board, Manatee School Board member Dave Watchdog Minor, and Gabriel Hammond, who is a member of the Financial Committee for Sarasota County. Thank you all for joining us. Bridget, let me start with you because you heard Caroline Zucker express concern that this is taking money out of the public school budget, money that is needed for programs, personnel, and everything that you need to do to run a school system. But you are in favor of the bill which is now law.
Well, so I want to clarify one thing that was articulated at the beginning, at the top of the opening segment, and it was discussed as, or labeled as private charter schools. I want to be very clear that that is an inaccurate statement. Okay. Charter schools are public schools, and so defining that distinction should be taken care of right off the bat. And so taking money away, again, I think that's wordsmithing. We should be focused on public school students and funding them accordingly as to where they go to school.
Well, you're saying wordsmithing, but the fact is that there will be less money available for public schools that are traditionally part of the public school system than there was before.
So they'd still all be public schools. I think the distinction is district managed schools, and then you have charter schools, which are separate but publicly funded and for public school students.
Dave, the Manatee County School Board was so concerned about the law before it was signed in by Governor Scott that you wrote a letter to the governor urging him to veto it.
Yes, our school board, every member, it was unanimous asking him to veto this legislation. Our board is not opposed to sharing money with charter schools as well, in addition to our traditional schools. That isn't the question. The question is how it's used, and is it used for a need? We oppose the idea that public money would go to a charter school, and it may go to not based on need, but based upon the number of students. That's the formula of 7069. It doesn't make sense. We don't build a school if there's not a need. If there's not a need for something at a charter school, we don't think that public money should be used for that. We also oppose the idea that if public money is used to build something at a public school, that should still revert back to the public if something happens to that charter school. That is not the law that was passed in this reckless fashion by the legislature. And I sent an email to Senator Galvano asking him to say, sit down with me and let's see how we can make this better for the students and our whole state. I haven't heard back from him, but things like that. I don't think the public likes to have their money misused. They don't like to give away buildings, to other people if they're not getting a return.
Gabriel, let me talk to you about your perspective here, and I know that you also talk a lot to the teachers union in terms of their expressed concerns about this. Caroline, Bridget said that all charter schools are public schools. There's a lot of people who support charter schools, and especially when there are schools that are failing. And I know in Sarasota County we're blessed. So what is the basis of that concern?
Well, Alan, the truth is I've been running around the district asking stakeholders, parents, teachers, what is best for the district, and they are in opposition to House Bill 7069. Unfortunately, from Washington to Tallahassee, down to the even local school district, there is a concerted, orchestrated effort to privatize public education, and this bill was the first step. Unfortunately,
let me just stop you there. I mean, has there been any kind of scientific polling to determine where people are at in terms of the public funding to charter schools, especially here in Sarasota County?
Well, what I can tell you is that House Bill 7069 was not done in the sunshine. It was put together at the last minute without public input by a handful of legislators up in Tallahassee, some of them who benefit directly from the for-profit management companies that operate charters in the southern part of the state.
And I want to get...
Can I add to what he said about, benefiting privately and some of the legislators? And it's not just the Speaker of the House, but Manny Diaz down in Hialeah. He collects a six-figure income as an operating officer of the Doral College charter school. You have House Speaker Richard Corcoran, whose wife founded a charter school up in Pasco County. Michael Baleka.
I'll tell you
cheers. It goes on and on what the private gain.
We are just getting started with this conversation.
Okay, well, I'm just saying there's a lot of conflict of interest, and people say, where's the ethics with our legislature in passing this? And those are reasonable questions.
We are going to pick it up right after we check on the weather, so please stay with us.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome back. If you're just joining us, we are discussing a new comprehensive education law signed into law by Governor Rick Scott, which requires school districts to shift local tax dollars towards charter schools. Our guests tonight are Bridget Ziegler of the Sarasota County School Board, Dave Watchdog Minor of the Manatee County School Board, and Gabriel Hammond, who is a member of the Financial Advisory Committee for the County of Sarasota. And as we reported in Kate's story, Broward County is filing a lawsuit against the state for, in one reason, they complain that the law restricts the district's right to operate, control, and supervise all schools, and its property tax sharing measure violates the state's constitution because charters are not permitted to collect property taxes. Bridget, if the schools are receiving tax dollars but are not controlled or managed in any way by elected leaders like yourself, doesn't that, as Broward County suggests, violate the state constitution?
I personally, my interpretation, I do not agree, and I think that you have to understand that as an elected body from the local school board, you're a constitutional officer, and you interview. There's a whole process for charters to be approved, and you scrutinize them, make sure their financials are in place, you make sure their curriculum is in place, and they have set a series of standards, and then you approve them. And the purpose is for them to have more autonomy, and there's a number of other elements of 7069 for district managed schools that bring back that autonomy, and I think that the intent and the purpose is that you see more schools thrive when there's less of a stranglehold. And I do want to get back to something that Gabe had said earlier, was the privatizing education, and I just get frustrated with that because I don't know why it's always an us versus them, because I think ultimately high quality school choice options are what should be applauded for. And when I talk to a number of parents daily and stakeholders all around, and choice is often very, very celebrated, and I think it creates a better environment.
Hold on one second. I want to give Gabe a chance to respond. I also want to point out you're on the financial advisory panel for the school board, so I wanted to correct that.
You can't advocate for an expansion of school choice at the same time lowering expenditures for high-performing public schools such as those in Sarasota County. Right now, the district is having to make some hard choices because of this piece of legislation out of Tallahassee, including, in the next 2 years, taking out $30 million in debt just to keep up with new school construction because of the increase in population locally. Taking out $30 million forces the district over a 20-year period to pay, on average, $800,000 per year in interest payments. So we're transferring money from our schools, our taxpayers, our children's future, to bondholders, to Wall Street bankers. Whose side are our local leaders on?
That's a great question. One of the things that is a result of this legislation is that the cost of borrowing this money goes up. Moody's Investor Services, which rates bonds, has come out, and I have a copy of this letter, and they note the negative impact upon public borrowing of this legislation. Negative impact means that we have to take money that otherwise would go into building schools, to pay interest on bonds that are borrowed to build schools. That's bad for everyone. Just everything about this.
Let me pose it as a question, because obviously, people may be for choice, may want to have more control over where they send their kids, but we also have to balance our checkbooks. And if this is taking money away or making it more difficult for the school department to pay its bills, obviously, companies like Moody's are seeing this as a negative.
Okay, so there's a couple things. What's amazing to me, the conversation is always about money, and we are not even talking about why are there more choices, and it's because the outcomes or the environment is not what certain parents or students are allowing them to thrive. So for me, as a public school board member that's overseeing or there to support the constituents of all of Sarasota County, all of the stakeholders, I want to empower families to make those decisions because it's all about student success. That's what we're there for. It's not about money.
No, nobody disagrees with
But
that.
we always
Bridget.
get back to the conversation of money, but we're never talking about students not succeeding in their schools. And why is that not outraging people?
Well, why is it in charter schools, students sometimes don't succeed? We've had to close down, some charter schools because they didn't do that.
Disagree.
And our school board is all for choice. It supports, it shares money. In fact, from our half-cent sales tax for capital improvements, we've been sharing millions of dollars with charter schools. But we want it used responsibly. And this bill doesn't provide in it provision for using it responsibly. It's a cash register for private interest of our legislators.
Gabriel, is there any estimation how, in terms of expenditures, what money goes where is going to be affected in Sarasota in terms of whether it's construction or maintenance or programs?
Well, the district has had to make a number of hard choices because of this heavy-handed piece of legislation coming out of Tallahassee, including pushing off new construction and the purchase of land for a new high school because Riverview and Venice High are getting real crowded now. So we got to look at where we're going to build a new high school. Instead of doing that next year, we're going to do that in 2 years.
But if I may, we have pushed back a number of our projects to deal with our capacity issues because enrollment is not at the level which we predicted it be. So that inevitably would likely have to be evaluated anyhow.
So there is no impact, are you saying, in terms
I certainly
on?
think that that's an impact that we have to evaluate, but it follows the demand of what various families are seeking. So I think that's our job, and as any other company would do, based on what the consumer, if you will, is utilizing, you have to adjust accordingly. And I think that we can have amazing district-managed schools and great charter schools at the same time. And you brought up the $30 million bond, which is on our capital improvement plan for next week, and it was just a brief conversation. So I think our district, we have to do further vetting to discuss what are alternative options.
Despite what you say there, you indicated to me earlier that there may well be enough votes on the school board to join that Broward County lawsuit.
That's pure speculation. I have absolutely no idea. It hasn't been brought
your
up.
fellow board members, some of whom disagree with what you're saying here,
I mean,
strongly.
I don't ever speak for other board members. It would say it would be ultimately held up and to see what this discussed on Tuesday.
Dave, do you have any indication whether Manatee would join this lawsuit?
I think there's total sympathy with what Broward has contemplated. They haven't filed a lawsuit. The pleadings, or they haven't drafted the pleadings, but they have sent out a memorandum talking about why it would be justified, and it is very compelling arguments why there should be, I call it judicial interpretation. That is, if you read Article 9 of the Florida Constitution, Section 4, says the school board shall operate, control, and supervise all free public schools with the school district. Bridget says, they're public schools, of course they are. And what this bill does is, according to the statute, it conflicts with the Florida Constitution.
And that's what I don't understand about this argument, because usually a lot of people, especially people who are conservative, Republican, believe in local control. You don't want Washington telling you what to do, Tallahassee telling you what to do, but here you have a new law that basically takes away the say of local educators and parents and elected folks like yourself to make local decisions.
Well, it's unfortunate. In Tallahassee, we have a Republican-dominated state house. We have a Republican-dominated Senate, and the governor's mansion is occupied by a Republican. And there's a special provision that comes out every year from the legislature known as the Public Education Capital Outlay Fund. And right now in the district of Sarasota County, there are 15% of the students in charter schools. They're receiving $1.7 million from that pool. 85% of students are in traditional public schools. They get $1.1 million. So the numbers are way out of whack, and it's just unfair for our public school students.
All right, let's take a quick break, and when we return, we'll have final thoughts from our guests, plus what some of our viewers are saying about Friday's topic, President Trump's trip to the G20 summit and his meeting with Vladimir Putin. Welcome back. Should charter schools be treated like public schools? Do they deserve a share of local tax dollars? Our guests join us right now for final thoughts. So, Bridget, what do you want people who are watching this right now to take away from this very animated conversation?
Well, first and foremost, I want everyone to agree and recognize that charter schools are public schools, even there when you said it. But ultimately, I want people to understand, in Sarasota County specifically, I'm really proud of what we have accomplished, both in our district managed and charter schools. We have an amazing partnership, and I think that's what allows them to thrive. But fundamentally, as this discussion goes forward, it's all about the money, following the student, and letting those choices be up to the families.
What's to disagree with there, Dave?
Well, I think the problem is this bill doesn't do just that. It is harmful overall. It needs a lot of medical attention in Tallahassee in a sense that it should be serving the people, not the legislators' selfish interests. The original bills, both in the House and the Senate, contained provisions that barred conflict of owners, of anybody working there, benefiting from the public money. This bill that was passed, stripped those ethical provisions away. That's not good. Right. We need to have reforms in education that this takes away.
Gabriel, you get the last word.
The bottom line is this bill usurps and diminishes local control of our school district and policy making here in Sarasota County. It will also force our district to go deep into debt, pay bondholders instead of investment in technology and more teachers in our classrooms. And you know what my father told me? If it ain't broke, don't fix it. We have an excellent school district in Sarasota County.
Before we go, we want to share with you what some of our viewers are saying about Friday's topic, our analysis of President Trump's trip to the G20 summit. On Friday, President Trump held his first face-to-face meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin. The bilateral talks lasted more than 2 hours, according to Secretary of State Rex Tillerson. President Trump repeatedly pushed Putin on Russian interference in the 2016 U.S. presidential election. We asked you what you thought about the meeting, and Cheryl Katie writes, "I am proud to be an American." Gail Williams writes, "Amazing accomplishments today between our president and Putin, and no red line here, just respect." But Kevin Komanga writes, "Up to 2 days ago, Trump denied Russia was involved. 2 days ago, he said Russia and others were involved in, he insulted our intelligence and community and former president on the world stage." Do you think he was winking about it when he talked to Putin about it? Well, what do you think about giving local tax dollars to public schools? Join the conversation on tonight's topic by visiting our Facebook page at facebook.com/news@7. And FYI, you can watch past discussions. They're on demand. They're available on Apple TV, Amazon Fire, and Roku. Thanks to all our guests for being here tonight. Bridget Ziegler is the Vice Chair of the Sarasota County School Board. Dave Watchdog Miner is on the Manatee County School Board, and Gabriel Hammond is on the Financial Advisory Committee for the Sarasota County Public School District.